tap into. And I had made the same mistake so many times.
Ryan Reynolds has found himself in serious trouble following his latest statement, as today marks the day Blake Lively is due to be deposed. What's emerged is damning evidence suggesting she has contradicted herself after previously claiming that Justin Baldoni was a danger who needed to be exposed, something she apparently never truly believed. Blake Lively has officially entered meltdown mode after her husband, Ryan Reynolds, couldn't keep quiet and ended up airing her private matters for the world to see, leaving her scrambling to limit the damage while he behaves as if Disney executives haven't just threatened his entire career. In reality, Blake's experience wasn't as severe as she made it seem, and she reportedly never intended to go public at all. When asked why she did, she insisted it was due to a smear campaign. But that explanation isn't holding up well. The situation now appears far more fragile than their carefully cultivated power couple image ever did. Ryan Reynolds may have thought he was defending Blake, but all he's managed to do is make matters worse, particularly after publicly labeling Justin Baldoni a predator. That bold accusation has now come back to haunt them both, as people expected concrete proof. In truth, the alleged smear campaign appears to have been worse than the supposed misconduct itself. According to Megan Tuo, a reporter from the New York Times, Blake had already admitted privately that the incident with Baldoni wasn't nearly as extreme as it appeared. In a candid conversation, she confessed that the drama surrounding Baldoni wasn't even the worst experience she had faced in Hollywood. Blake herself said it wasn't really that bad, a statement that has now landed Ryan in even deeper trouble, as his comments portrayed Baldoni as a genuine threat. Not only was that reckless, but it also created a glaring contradiction. This information reportedly came directly from Blake, prompting many to wonder whether she and Ryan are even aligned in their responses. Are they managing damage control separately? If they were truly united, why would Blake privately play down the incident while Ryan publicly condemned Baldoni's career? That inconsistency immediately redirected the public's attention back onto them. Ryan defended himself by claiming it was his right to free speech and that he genuinely believed Baldoni was a predator. Yet, how could he have believed that when Blake herself was saying it wasn't serious at all? Instead of calming the controversy, Ryan's exaggerated remarks only deepened doubts about what's really going on behind the scenes of their supposedly perfect marriage. He acted with reckless disregard for the truth, deliberately amplifying Blake's experience despite knowing that Baldoni wasn't the monster he described. But the drama didn't end there. Behind Hollywood's polished facade, Blake was allegedly playing a dangerous game of her own. While the public believed she was quietly dealing with the situation, insiders paint a different picture. A full-scale smear campaign aimed at destroying Baldoni's reputation before he had a chance to defend himself. This wasn't mere speculation either. Dr. Romani, a respected psychologist specializing in narcissistic behavior, analyzed her actions and concluded they matched every hallmark of a classic smear tactic. According to reports, Blake began by targeting Baldoni's inner circle, turning cast members, studio insiders, and even journalists against him by suggesting he was dangerous and toxic long before any legal action was taken. She allegedly used his own words against him. Baldoni had previously admitted he wasn't perfect and was still learning how to better support women. Instead of seeing this as personal growth, Blake twisted his honesty to make him appear as a serial offender. Things took a dramatic turn when an unearthed interview with New York Times journalist Megan Tuo resurfaced. Tuo, who had initially helped amplify Blake's claims against Baldoni, unintentionally undermined her own reporting during a December 2024 interview. She openly admitted that Blake herself had downplayed the so-called incident, which formed the basis of her legal case. According to Tuo, Blake told her directly, "This was not the worst thing I've experienced in Hollywood. I've actually been through far worse misconduct." That single admission has reignited the controversy, casting serious doubt on the truth behind Blake Lively's story and leaving both her and Ryan Reynolds facing a public relations disaster of their own making. It wasn't really that bad. What was bad, Blake admitted, was what came afterwards, the smear campaign she believes I was part of, along with countless other online creators and, of course, an army of bots. If the incident truly wasn't her worst experience, then why did Blake choose this particular situation to launch her first public harassment lawsuit? Why target Justin Baldoni so aggressively while brushing off far worse experiences from her past? Many believe that if she were to withdraw her case now, she'd appear both cowardly and dishonest. The inconsistencies didn't end there. During the same interview, New York Times reporter Megan Tuo revealed that, by Blake's own account, the situation on set had actually been handled rather well. Blake set her own conditions, demanding clear behavioral changes, and Baldoni reportedly agreed, not merely verbally, but by signing a 17-point contract detailing exactly how he was expected to conduct himself moving forward. It became a silent pact. Blake would return to set, production would continue, and everything would appear stable to outsiders. Baldoni agreed to this 17-point behavior agreement, outlining how he should act on set and promising to avoid any repeat of the alleged misconduct. According to Blake herself, Baldoni's behavior improved significantly once these measures were in place. However, beneath the surface, that very contract exposed just how much control Blake was exerting behind the scenes. The public saw only the polished narrative, the emotional interviews, the curated victim image, and the sympathetic headlines. But few realized how Blake leveraged her influence to corner Baldoni into submission. He had little choice: comply or risk having the entire project collapse, along with his professional reputation. Blake confronted Baldoni directly, insisting he stop behaving that way. And though we now know there's little evidence he acted improperly to begin with, he still agreed and signed the document purely to keep working. What makes matters worse is that this all unfolded months before the lawsuit was even filed. Blake knew he'd signed under duress, yet she still proceeded to take him to court, constructing a case seemingly designed to further discredit and humiliate him. That sequence of events undermines her entire helpless victim narrative. It wasn't helplessness, it was strategy. Meanwhile, Ryan Reynolds, in his self-appointed role as the protective husband, took to the spotlight with statements that now appear dangerously reckless. Remember when he publicly branded Justin Baldoni a predator? He didn't hesitate to use that word, presenting it as a defense of Blake's honor. But once Megan Tuo's interview surfaced, his comments began to look less like genuine outrage and more like a calculated publicity move. How could a husband accuse someone so forcefully when his wife had privately told a journalist that the incident wasn't even that severe? The contradictions didn't just confuse the public, they exposed how chaotic, strategic, and inconsistent the entire situation truly was. In her December 2024 interview, Megan Tuo highlighted the glaring gaps. Blake minimized the issue in private conversations with trusted media, while her legal team, supported by Reynolds, publicly depicted the event as catastrophic and traumatizing. The 17-point behavior contract only added to the controversy. It wasn't a casual agreement, but a formal list of demands signed under pressure, effectively a form of professional coercion masquerading as workplace protection. Behind the curtain, Blake wielded authority and control. In front of the cameras, she portrayed fragility, fear, and outrage. These two versions of her, the manipulative on-set enforcer and the tearful victim, could not coexist without scrutiny. And once Megan's recounting of Blake's own words emerged, that scrutiny became unavoidable. Blake's admission that she had endured far worse misconduct in the past shattered the sense of urgency her legal claims had created. It suggested the lawsuit was less about justice or healing and more about narrative management, power, and image control. The public quickly began connecting the dots. If Blake could downplay the incident privately while manipulating the legal system to silence Baldoni, what else might she have concealed? Ryan Reynolds' exaggerated defense only magnified the issue, drawing renewed attention to Blake and further undermining the credibility of her claims. The fallout soon reached beyond gossip columns. It directly affected Baldoni's career. Reports trace the damage back to the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere in July 2024, when Reynolds allegedly used his influence behind the scenes to derail Baldoni's professional prospects. According to multiple sources, Reynolds approached senior executives at WME, one of Hollywood's most powerful talent agencies, and branded Baldoni a predator. It wasn't whispered discreetly or implied subtly. It was said loud and clear, ensuring the right people at WME heard it. According to Justin Baldoni, it was Ryan Reynolds' remarks that ultimately cost him his career representation. The consequences were swift. WME, the prestigious agency managing Baldoni, abruptly terminated their contract with him shortly after the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. The timing was no coincidence. Baldoni directly attributed his firing to behind-the-scenes pressure from Reynolds, not to any allegations of misconduct, but to a calculated attack on his livelihood. Reynolds, leveraging his immense influence, his status as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, and his proximity to Blake Lively's version of events, allegedly persuaded WME to cut ties with Baldoni. The incident reportedly took place in July 2024. When Reynolds confronted WME executives at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere and expressed his disdain for Baldoni, referring to him, according to several witnesses, as a predator. But the story didn't end there. It became even more tangled when Ari Emanuel, the former CEO of WME and one of Hollywood's most powerful figures, appeared to confirm Reynolds' influence in a leaked conversation from late 2024. Emanuel didn't deny the actor's involvement. Instead, he openly admitted his unwavering loyalty to both Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. Referring to the Baldoni situation as an unfortunate mess, he stood by WME's decision to terminate Baldoni's contract, citing his long-standing trust in the couple both personally and professionally. In his own blunt words, Emanuel stated that he always trusted Blake and Ryan, effectively dismissing Baldoni's side of the story. He defended them as good people with spotless reputations, an image that was already beginning to fracture. Blake's private admission to New York Times reporter Megan Tuo that the incident wasn't that bad had exposed how greatly the public version of events had been exaggerated. Despite this, Emanuel sided with the Lively Reynolds narrative and dismissed Baldoni, not on the basis of evidence but seemingly due to Reynolds' personal vendetta. It's widely believed that Ari Emanuel would never have fired Justin Baldoni were it not for the intervention of Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, a move that caused lasting financial and reputational harm. That's where the true scandal lies. Reynolds' reckless accusation didn't just stir gossip. It destroyed a man's career. Baldoni lost his agency, his professional backing, and his access to major opportunities. The moment Reynolds publicly labeled him a predator, his credibility began to collapse, all because of whispers and influence rather than legal findings or court rulings. Megan Tuo later commented, "By her own account, this was a case of a problem identified, problem solved, and everyone moved on. The more closely one looks, the clearer it becomes that the Lively Reynolds image has been carefully managed and dangerously fragile. On the surface, they project the picture-perfect Hollywood marriage, philanthropy, family values, and cheeky social media banter. Yet behind the curtain, they appear to operate with ruthless precision, using their fame to silence critics, suppress opposition, and protect a carefully curated reputation. The cracks, however, were already visible as far back as 2023. When author Colleen Hoover faced backlash for casting Blake Lively in her film adaptation, the controversy predated any supposed smear campaign involving Justin Baldoni. This context further complicates the narrative, suggesting that Lively's camp may have been managing perception long before the legal disputes ever began. Reynolds' decision to wade into the legal chaos with bold, unverified accusations wasn't simply an act of marital defense. It had real, damaging consequences for another professional. That misuse of power marked a turning point, transforming Reynolds from Hollywood's beloved everyman into someone wielding influence recklessly. It reinforced suspicions that Blake's accusations weren't being handled through proper legal or ethical channels, but through private backdoor maneuvers, reputation control, and industry pressure. When Ari Emanuel's comments surfaced confirming Reynolds' influence over WME's decision, the carefully maintained facade of Hollywood's golden couple began to crumble. The public finally saw how deeply their influence extended beyond red carpets and light-hearted interviews into the very machinery of the entertainment industry itself. Reynolds' calculated move at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere revealed just how dangerous that power can be when used to protect a false narrative. As for Justin Baldoni, his own legal case suffered a significant setback. His lawsuit against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and publicist Leslie Sloan was partially dismissed in June 2025 by Judge Lehman. Though he was granted permission to amend 4 of the 7 claims, the major allegations were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could not be refiled. That ruling gave Blake the perfect opportunity to step back gracefully, to emerge looking like the victor, her reputation intact. But instead of walking away, she doubled down, ensuring the controversy would continue to shadow both her and Ryan for months to come. Blake's legal maneuvers didn't stop there. They only escalated, as did the public backlash. Soon, social media was ablaze with speculation, with many exclaiming, "Oh my God, Justin Baldoni just dropped his entire lawsuit." The dismissed claims gave Blake just enough leverage to parade a supposed victory, with her team spinning headlines that made it seem as though the entire case had been resolved, even though 4 serious allegations still remained. Most expected her to quietly withdraw, avoid further scrutiny, and protect what was left of her public image. But Blake couldn't resist. Instead of retreating, she leaned into the chaos, doubling down with additional legal filings, public statements, and contradictory narratives that only made things worse. Reports suggested that Baldoni hadn't so much dropped everything as chosen to focus on defending himself, something his lawyer, Brian Friedman, made abundantly clear in recent press interviews. By the end of June, the consequences of Blake's stubbornness began to close in. Depositions, including her own, were imminent, and the cracks in her story were becoming impossible to ignore. A previously unearthed interview from December 2020 with journalist Megan Tuhey revealed Blake's private admission that the incident with Baldoni wasn't the worst she'd experienced, transforming her upcoming deposition into a potential minefield. Under oath, she would have to either stand by her public narrative of victimhood or explain why she had previously downplayed the matter in private. Amid the legal confusion, even Paris Hilton weighed in, suggesting Blake's team might attempt an appeal. Yet behind the scenes, the situation was deteriorating further. Blake's longtime publicist, Leslie Sloan, demanded a staggering $3 million in legal fees after her portion of the lawsuit was dismissed. Sloan, no stranger to PR disasters, argued that she had been unfairly dragged into the case, insisting Baldoni and Wayfarer Entertainment should cover her legal costs. But her demands only inflamed the chaos. Text messages between journalist James Vashka and Baldoni's team later revealed tangled ties between Sloan, certain media outlets, and the wider defamation circus surrounding Blake's lawsuit. While Sloan admitted she'd been unaware of some incidents until they appeared in the press, her 7-figure demand appeared less like legitimate compensation and more like an opportunistic grab amid the turmoil. As this unfolded, the mood in Hollywood began to shift. Insiders noted that the carefully managed narrative Blake and her husband Ryan Reynolds had worked to control was unraveling. The public was no longer buying the polished headlines. Contradictions between Blake's private admissions, Reynolds' reckless remarks, and Sloan's questionable conduct began piling up. Even loyal fans started questioning the cracks that Blake seemed desperate to conceal. Further revelations only deepened the damage. Paris Hilton reportedly uncovered an old NPR interview with Megan Tuhey, the New York Times journalist who had first broken the Blake Lively Justin Baldoni story, suggesting inconsistencies that could reshape the entire case. The more Blake pushed, the more contradictions, half-truths, and questionable tactics surfaced. The meltdown wasn't coming from outside forces. It was imploding from within her own PR machine. To make matters worse, Blake's legal circus erupted just as another major Hollywood scandal hit the headlines: the Kevin Costner Horizon 2 controversy. Suddenly, the entertainment world had a genuine harassment case to focus on, one backed by irrefutable evidence. Devin Labella, a professional stunt performer, accused Costner of orchestrating an unscripted, violent scene during filming in May 2020. Unlike Blake's vague and media-driven accusations, Labella presented tangible proof: text messages, time-stamped conversations, and official communications with intimacy coordinator Celeste Chaney, all detailing her discomfort and objections. Her attorney didn't need to rely on spin. The evidence spoke for itself. In stark contrast, Blake's claims against Baldoni began collapsing under the weight of missing proof. Despite months of media attention, court filings, and statements, she had produced no text messages, no emails, and no contemporaneous records supporting her allegations, not even private messages to Ryan Reynolds or production staff. The absence was glaring. As the Costner case gained credibility through hard evidence, Blake's legal battle appeared increasingly hollow. Worse still, the few texts that did surface painted an unflattering picture, full of flirtatious banter, light-hearted exchanges, and suggestive jokes that directly undermined her later claims of discomfort and misconduct. Seasoned journalists questioned why Tuhey had spent months investigating Blake's side, yet reportedly gave Baldoni only an hour or two to respond, raising serious doubts about the fairness of the coverage. In the end, the story Blake tried so hard to control spiraled beyond her reach. What was meant to be a calculated legal stand turned into a public unraveling, a collision of ego, missteps, and manufactured narratives that left even Hollywood's most loyal onlookers wondering where the truth actually lies. Media outlets soon began drawing comparisons, and none of them favored Blake, while Devin Labella's account gained credibility with each new message released. Blake's version of events sank further into doubt. People started asking the obvious question: if the incident with Justin Baldoni had truly been as severe as she claimed, where was the evidence? Where were the undeniable receipts? The raw messages and proof that usually accompany cases of this nature. Adding to the growing pressure, whispers spread through Hollywood about just how carefully choreographed Blake's legal battle had been from the very beginning. Her polished image as a victim, her reliance on strategically timed interviews, and her close connections with outlets such as the New York Times now appeared less like a pursuit of justice and more like a desperate act of damage control. By contrast, Devin Labella's straightforward, documented approach provided the public with a tangible, evidence-based case, one that sharply undermined Blake's increasingly fragile claims. The backlash intensified as Kevin Costner's legal team clashed publicly with Labella's solicitor. Yet despite the noise, no one could deny the strength of Labella's evidence. For Blake, trapped in a battle built on contradictions, media spin, and missing proof, the timing of the comparison could not have been worse. Her credibility took another hit, her legal narrative continued to unravel, and the public's patience began to wear thin. The flawless image she had cultivated for years didn't merely crack, it shattered. The once idolized image of Hollywood's perfect couple, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, collapsed in full view. The secrets fueling that downfall came directly from Blake herself. Her contradictions, the smear campaign against Justin Baldoni, and her inconsistent accusations were no longer hidden. They were dragged into the spotlight by the same journalists and insiders the couple had once tried to manipulate through curated interviews and sympathetic headlines.